trade efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends.
Here in episode 73, we have joining us Seth Clevenger. He's managing editor of Transport Topics, where we talk about the role of the trade press in informing industry leaders, facilitating conversations and sparking discussions. He also talks about his career as a journalist and what's changed for him in reporting on the trucking industry. He comments on the transformational times trucking is in and encourages everyone in trucking to be open to all of the new possibilities. Today we have joining us Seth Clevenger. He's the managing editor at Transport Topics, and I'm really excited to have you on today, Seth, and thanks for joining us.
Of course, great to be on the podcast, and it's always good to chat.
Yeah, so I always ask, how we met, because this is titled NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends, and I don't know if now we're up over 70 of these, so I don't know if folks like yourself that are, I'm guessing you're expecting the question. So have you thought about it? Do you remember how we met?
I went back and looked, and I couldn't quite pinpoint, but I imagine it was surely at a trade show, probably at a press conference at maybe TMC or Mid-America over the years. I've been at Transport Topics now for almost 12 years now. So it would have been that time frame, probably 2011, 12.
Yeah, it's been that long. I do remember one of the things I used to do was try to get over to the American Trucking Association's offices where you guys were in what was it, in Arlington?
Yeah, that's right. Until recently, the HQ was in the Ballston neighborhood of Arlington, kind of just outside of the district.
So, as we started NACFE, we brought Denise Rondini on very early, and she was recommended actually from a dealer principal out in the West, Kyle Treadway. And I remember in my first conversations with Denise and telling her what we wanted NACFE to become, she said, Mike, I'm glad we're connected because you need the trucking editors, you need the media to really make the impact you want to make, help you tell your stories or help you tell the learnings you're getting on these technologies and so forth. Man, was she ever right? She's right in a lot of things, and she was sure right there. So no, I've come to know all of you guys pretty well. Occasionally, sometimes I feel like maybe even NACFE is in the media group, but we're also, outside of it. But yeah, it's good to have you guys as real friends. I mean, tell me a little bit about that sort of trucking editor club, if you will. How do you guys work together? I mean, we'll get into some more details, I'm sure, but I've always been impressed with the group.
Yeah, it is a really good core in the trade press that covers the trucking industry. See many of the same faces, of course, at some of the big shows in the industry, some of the big press events. We're competitors, but at the same time, we're all, in a sense, kind of in it together. We're all, in our own way, part of the transportation industry, part of the trucking industry, informing industry leaders, especially decision makers, on the key trends and issues and regulations and technologies that they need to be aware of to run their businesses effectively.
Right.
So we kind of have that shared mission, even though we're competitors. Denise is great. Been working with her, of course, for probably on and off for most of my duration at Transport Topics. And I think that a group like NACFE, of course, is a great resource for us in the industry, trade media, as we want to understand some of these big trends. And of course, NACFE is right at the heart of one of the biggest ones we see right now, which is sustainability. And it's amazing how that conversation has changed as well from, say, 10 years ago to where we are now, with battery electric trucks now entering the market in small numbers. But of course, that was not a topic at all a decade ago. We're looking very closely at natural gas, but it is amazing how far the industry has come in just the last decade.
Yeah, and I got to believe in your work. When you spend a particular amount of time on a topic, the industry's kind of looking at that and saying, hey, everyone in the industry should pay attention to this or that, whether it's, like you said, battery electric or natural gas or automation or different things. So you are in many ways, helping to lead the trucking industry into its future. And, there's a lot on our plate right now, a lot of entrepreneurs bringing products and ideas and regulators thinking they know what the future's like, as well as a lot of others. So You're a key part of that. Do you feel that responsibility?
I certainly do. It really is. We're facilitators. We're providing information that's important for managers in our industry to understand and think about. In many cases, we're facilitating that conversation. I think that when I think of our role at Transport Topics, yes, it's to inform what's the breaking news, what are the regulations that are being discussed, what's happening on Capitol Hill. What are the technologies that are emerging and we're starting to see potentially entering the marketplace? But beyond that, I mean, there's what I hope for is that our readers, our subscribers, and those who read us online at ttnews.com, it sparks ideas and it sparks conversations. Within the C-suite, at companies. Hopefully, we are, fueling the conversation. That the real decision makers in our industry need to have to lead their businesses forward and lead the industry forward. It's a critical industry, and we take that role very seriously. I mean, I certainly do think about that a lot. I enjoy conversations I have with our readers. When I bump into them on the road or get a call or whatever the case may be, to have those kind of conversations. And I'm always curious, what they find, to be the most valuable, what helps them the most.
I kind of dove in pretty deep, pretty quick there with challenging you on your responsibility to the industry. Let's bring it sort of back up a level. I mean, how did you find yourself doing this? I mean, I noticed in your bio that you graduated from Miami of Ohio. I grew up really close to that school in southwestern Ohio. But tell us about your background and what landed you here and doing this work.
Well, to be perfectly honest, I kind of stumbled into it. I grew up in Ohio. I grew up in Northwest Ohio, family farm, not terribly far from the Indiana line, near Lima. I guess Lima, Ohio is the closest city of any size, right off of I-75. Went to school in Miami, Ohio, close to Cincinnati, and beautiful part of the country. Actually, love to go back there for college reunions once in a while, which reminds me that I'm overdue for that. I need to round up the college guys again here at some point to go back there. It's been a few years. But I went to school, kind of settled into the journalism track at Miami, worked for did some freelance work for the student newspaper and also some area, local newspapers. In Oxford, Ohio, and Hamilton, Ohio, just to kind of get my start, and found that I really enjoyed it. One thing I like about journalism, about writing for news publications, is that every day is a little bit different. You never have time to be bored because you're too busy, for one, and everything's a little bit. There's always something new, something different. So after school, I ended up moving out to Delaware for 6 years. My first job out of school, working for a chain of local newspapers. And honestly, I thought it was going to be a shorter stop than it was. I ended up staying there for 6 years, kind of weathering the Great Recession, when certainly jobs in the newspaper industry were pretty few and far between. But I eventually wanted to relocate to the Washington, D.C. area. I also wanted to get into the trade press because I always liked covering business. I always liked, and I was covering everything from school board meetings, city hall, local sports. But I always did kind of gravitate toward business, and just happened to see a job ad for Transport Topics. They had a entry-level job opening. This is again about 12 years ago. And at the time, it was kind of just a lateral move for me, but it seemed interesting. It seemed like a better track. I got into it, and I just, like I said, kind of just stumbled into it. But I stumbled. It was just a great fit.
I still enjoy the big, huge, Transport Topics that comes in the mail. What I find myself doing is I sort of follow it online during the week, and then either on the weekend or when Letty and I get back from a road trip, I'll find myself with a coffee or a beer and in that big publication, right? So, but we're definitely moving from print to other multimedia with things like these podcasts and whatever. I mean, What do you? How is that showing up for you? Sort of give us the inside
Yeah.
on how you do what you do and why you do what you do.
I'm 40 years old, so I'm an old millennial. So I'm sort of a digital native, but I also, kind of grew up in the more print and manual world as well. So my training, my school was primarily in traditional print journalism, and that's still, the lion's share of what I do. But the same work that we do, for the print publication, weekly publication is much the same as we produce for the web as well. I think there's a different expectation and also different value for the different mediums. I think that your example of kind of sitting down with a cup of coffee, with a print version is a typical experience where as we think about how we're putting the newspaper or a magazine together, we're thinking about, okay, chances are this is where the reader has a chance to sit back and spend some time at breakfast or maybe a lunch break and really kind of dive into it. And then the web, of course, is where we really prioritize breaking news. It's not all Knight Swift acquiring U.S. Express. It's whatever the latest turn of the screw may be in regulation or
Yeah.
other industry news that pops up. But it's more immediate, of course, online. And we found, of course, that there's of course a shift toward online. We still see a strong place for print, but it's just an understanding that it can never be as immediate as the web. So it's maybe a little bit more long form, a little bit more thought pieces that are a little bit more evergreen than the web. And yeah, more and more multimedia. I was never classically trained in the world of audio recording or even public speaking, but after 11 plus almost 12 years, I now find myself more and more speaking at industry events, moderating panels on stage. Of course, we have our own podcast called Transport Topics Road Signs. And of course, Mike, you've been a guest before. We do multimedia webinars and video reporting from conferences.
It's really interesting. I think it makes me think that kind of I look at what I do, right, whether it's finding something online or looking at newsletters, that sort of thing. I do want the latest, but when I do that, I don't have time to really spend time with it unless it's like huge news related to what I'm doing. But
Right.
oftentimes, whether it's the print or whether it's listening to a podcast that's interesting or a recorded webinar, I mean, I will find myself, having calendar time again, whether it's early morning or in the evening or maybe it's a long lunch or something where you just say, okay, I want to experience or understand that deeper, and then you schedule some time to go do it. Just like we always maybe scheduled time for the newspaper. Now we're doing that with some of these other media things like podcasts or recorded webinars or various different things. So really interesting. Hey, I want to ask you though, how you see the industry. You said a few minutes ago that, some of these things, battery trucks, self-driving trucks, on and on, we wouldn't have even thought about 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, right.
And it just feels like we're in some really crazy times with trucking. And I use the word crazy, and we call the messy middle, it's so messy. I think there's always whatever our careers is, there's always change going on and so forth. But this feels bigger. It feels like there's
Yeah.
more reward and more risk for the right decisions. And it just makes our work so much more important to educate and inform and sort of lead the industry. First of all, we've sort of talked about that responsibility already, but how do you view and how do the people you interview and so forth? I mean, how are they viewing these times in trucking?
Yeah. Well, I certainly agree with you, and I think most of our readers and most of the folks I talk to would also agree that this is a transformative time for the trucking industry. I mean, there are so many changes happening, and we see it in terms of the equipment that these companies are using to move the freight. Of course, I mentioned battery electric. There's other technologies that are either on the market or in development, like hydrogen fuel cell, renewable fuels, natural gas. So many different options that are either available or are becoming available in the coming years. So it's no longer a standard default choice that everything will be diesel. And speaking of diesel engines are going to get more and more complex with some of the regulations and further steps for emissions that are on the books now from EPA and CARB. So even the standard diesel engine is going to get more and more complex and cleaner as well. But there's a whole lot to sort through. There's a whole lot to prepare for, regardless of which side of the business you're on. If you're a driver, if you're a fleet manager, if you're a dispatcher, if you're in the maintenance shop, your world is changing. Other technologies you mentioned, automated driving. We've seen the driver assist technology get better and better and more sophisticated. And also we have the startups and technology companies that are pushing hard to make level 4 autonomous trucks a reality in certain lanes. That's been a long road, but we also see so much investment. So it'll be very fascinating to see, if that can scale up gradually in the coming years. But yeah, just so many things to keep track of.
Right.
Plus, you have the shipper demands and the consumer demands are changing. You have more and more e-commerce and desire for either next day, 2-day, or even same day delivery for certain products. There's just so many things that are changing. Plus this push for sustainability that's not only coming from the government, but also from major shippers, very large corporations that have, their ESG goals, and they're looking at their supply chain as a way to reduce their scope 3 emissions. That's all stuff that trucking companies are going to have to deal with. So it's just so many things happening on so many different fronts all at the same time. Compared to 10 years ago, I think it was a lot easier to manage a trucking company than it is now.
Yeah, I think about I always challenge myself to say, okay, because the time we're in always seems, tough and complex and challenging, no matter what the situation is. But I think you're right. I mean, I am very proud of this industry because if I was to look forward, if we think we're back 10 years ago and you and I said, well, what if, we had this and we had that and we had the other, we had people driving a battery electric truck 500 miles on a single charge, or, the autonomous trips. And I think I would have said back 10 years ago that the industry would be going, oh my God, and almost have a deer in the headlights, not know what to do with it, and be pretty. I mean, I think the industry's always been fairly innovative and fairly open to change, but also, slow to change, and that, we got a big responsibility moving goods and getting it there when it needs to be there, from shipping pandemic virus, vaccines to the food and clothing and everything we've got to move. And so I'm pretty proud of the industry. I think it's accepting change, and it's looking at technology in a different way, not so scared of it. I go back to some of the early, PM and NOx regulations where we were like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? And now we have similar type challenges, and there's not quite the apprehension, of it. Does that feel that way to you too?
Yeah, I think so. I will say that, it kind of depends also on the size and the scope and the capabilities and the resources of the company. Given even though we've seen consolidation, this is still a very, very fragmented industry, and most companies are operating on thin margins.
Yeah.
So it can be pretty intimidating to see these big changes and what does this mean for my company. But this industry's been through it before, as you mentioned. You mentioned sort of the introduction of diesel particulate filters and then SCR. Big changes. More than a decade ago now. But now that we see this, more big changes on the horizon, the industry, will find ways. I mean, because it has to.
Yeah.
Like the freight needs to move. Somebody's going to do it, and the companies that find ways to navigate, this terrain are the ones that are going to either keep doing it or will grow and acquire some of their competitors.
Something I really did want to ask you about, and it kind of follows on to this discussion. It's about the many startups and entrepreneurs that are, that are in our space, whether it's, Tesla bringing a semi to the market or this, autonomous technologies. There's other like connectivity and load matching, things like Uber Freight. I mean, these are like, big organizations that have chose to bring products to trucking.
Right.
And we got a little bit of a young bull, old bull going on, right? We still have all of the continued players who know the market really well, the Freightliners, Internationals, Cummins, Dana Meritor. I mean, we've got all of those. Is that a healthy mix going on right now? And you got any what are your interesting thoughts around the mix of players?
Yeah, well, I think it is a great mix, and I think it's great for the industry. It's great for innovation. I think it'll push the industry forward. Of course, like you mentioned, there are all these, longstanding manufacturers and suppliers and technology developers who have been doing this for many decades and more. But we've fairly recently seen this big push, this influx of tech startups that are getting into the transportation industry, just big technology companies that are entering the transportation space. This is now a more and more attractive opportunity that entrepreneurs and innovators see, and it's tough because it's not easy to break into this market. I mean, so much is name recognition and trust, and you really do need to know the domain very well. Some of the companies have managed to do that, and we've seen some startups that have been very successful. Say on the heels of the ELD mandate. Others have tried and failed, of course, and that's the nature of startups. And it's a tough time right now in the technology space, I think, given the sort of the macroeconomic conditions. But this mix of these newcomers that are putting a lot of investment and innovation into the marketplace also keeps the incumbents honest, and they continue to innovate, of course, as well.
I think we've got a long history in trucking of being pretty collaborative. So I think, a lot of development will happen around the truck OEMs directly to the fleets with, component manufacturers developing things, working with the fleets, and then it coming back into the vehicles. I think, just the collaboration between universities and engineering firms with the industry and all that like long history has been really helpful for the organization and the trucking industry to accept these new ideas and players and so forth. So, hey, Seth, as we close out, I mean, what's your advice to like the broad industry as we navigate these times?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the simplest advice would just be to don't be complacent. Don't be comfortable, because change is coming. All business, across pretty much any industry will need to change over time, but there's a lot of that coming, down the pike in the transportation industry. So I would just say really stay on top of what the changes you see, whether it's regulations or technologies, changes to equipment, the changes that your customers are asking for. Be open to the possibilities, because the future is going to be different. Your company in 10 years from now could be quite different, and be open to that and really spend some time to dive into what that future might look like.
Very good, Seth. Thank you for joining us. It's been a great chat. I learned a little from you as well. So thanks for being on.
Of course. Thanks, Mike. And I'll see you at another trade show soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, there we go.
Freight Efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to support NACFE's work, please visit nacfe.org/support and click on the donate button. Thank you in advance.